My dad doesn't cry. He didn't cry when his own mother died, a woman he adored with a quiet intensity that was the closest he ever came to overt affection. He stood by her grave, a pillar of granite in a cheap black suit, his jaw set so tight I thought it might crack. He didn't cry when I graduated from college, summa cum laude, the first in our family to do so. He just shook my hand, a firm, dry grip that conveyed something I interpreted as pride, and said, "Good work, Daniel." He didn't even cry when my mother, his wife of 35 years, passed away after a brutal fight with cancer. He planned the funeral with the logistical precision of a military campaign, paid every bill on time, and returned to his empty house to live in a silence that was only a shade deeper than the silence he'd lived in before. My father, Arthur Vance, was a man forged from Midwestern bedrock and quiet duty. Emotions were a luxury, a frivolous expense he had long since decided he could not afford. So when I saw his face at the altar, I knew something was wrong. I was standing there, waiting for Chloe, my soon-to-be wife, to walk down the aisle. The organ was playing something classical and hopeful. Light was streaming through the stained glass windows of the old church, and my heart was hammering against my ribs with a joyful terror. I glanced out at the assembled guests, my eyes scanning for familiar faces, and they landed on my father in the front pew. He was looking straight at me, but his gaze was unfocused, distant. His face, usually a stoic mask, was crumpled. His lips were trembling, and a single perfect tear was tracing a path through the weathered lines on his cheek. Then another. He wasn't sobbing, not making a sound. It was a silent, agonizing leak, as if a pressure vessel deep inside him had finally, after 64 years, sprung a fatal flaw. He saw me looking, and his expression hardened instantly, the mask snapping back into place. He swiped at his cheek with the back of his hand, a quick, angry gesture, and straightened his tie, staring fixedly at the altar as if he could will the moment out of existence. But I had seen it. The image was burned into my mind. My father, the human glacier, melting. Chloe appeared at the back of the church, a vision in white, and the world snapped back into focus. But for the rest of the ceremony, through the vows and the exchange of rings, a cold knot of dread sat in my stomach. It wasn't about my wedding. It wasn't about Chloe. It was about him. What could possibly make Arthur Vance, a man who faced death and loss with an unnerving calm, break down at the sight of his son getting married? The question echoed in my head through the reception, through the toasts and the first dance. He was back to his old self, accepting congratulations with curt nods, nursing a single glass of scotch, a ghost at the feast of his own son's happiness. When I approached him, he clapped me on the shoulder, his hand heavy and brief. "She's a good woman, Daniel," he said, his voice its usual gravelly monotone. "Don't mess it up." I tried to press him. "Dad, are you okay? Earlier in the church?" He cut me off, his eyes flicking away. "Dusty in there. Old building." He turned his attention to a cousin, and the conversation was over. But I knew it wasn't dust. It was something deep and broken, a piece of shrapnel working its way to the surface after decades of being buried. And I realized with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that I didn't really know my father at all. Let me explain. Growing up, my father's love was a language of action, never words. It was a perfectly balanced bicycle, a repaired fence, a quietly paid tuition bill. He was a civil engineer, a man who believed the world could be made safe and predictable through the correct application of physics and reinforced concrete, an ethos he applied with equal rigor to bridge abutments and his only son. He taught me how to change a tire, how to balance a checkbook, how to wire a plug. He did not teach me how to talk about my feelings. That was my mother's domain.
Full story on channel link below.